Well, Jimi Hendrix. I haven't heard that for a while. A great song. Thank you very much for making us put that on, Ash. You know, you
Oh
did a
no,
very
it's
good
my
job
pleasure. It's my
there.
pleasure.
No problems at all. Okay, so we sort of got up to you being a young lad, a sort of 14, 15-year-old, getting his first amp and guitar. Where did it all go from there?
So, sort of, as I mentioned, like in our little pre-chat before we started the show, I wasn't great academically, particularly.
Yeah.
So when I got my guitar, it became my, I don't know, a school of symbiotic, really, I suppose, through school. In that, if I was generally seen, I was seen with a guitar bag on my back. So what I would do is spend most breaks in the music department at school, just practicing. And so the natural thing, my teachers were very much said to my parents, if he wants to go to, because I was, as a friend of mine at another school who was going to go to music college, he played drums, and just a local one in a place called Boston. There's a guy called Ray Fennick who ran this great rock course.
Oh yeah, I know Ray.
Yeah, and so I didn't know Ray at the time, but I knew of him. He was sort of the local guitar hero, really. And I went. I went and had an interview and everything. And the tutors at school were great. They were very much behind. Ash has found something he likes to do. You might as well let him do that and see what comes of it. So I went to music college, and there I met obviously Ray, who was a massive influence on my guitar playing, and very, very, very. He was very. Oh, what's the word? He was very happy to show you stuff and how. I didn't sort of have one-to-one guitar lessons with him as such. We used to do like rehearsal sessions with him, but he'd be quite happy to stay behind afterwards and go through certain parts of songs. And he really opened my mind up to different genres. Because by the time I started the college course, I was a total blues snob. Once this Stevie Ray Vaughan tune got played to me by a guy I met there, within 3 months of being there, I'd pretty much poo-pooed everything else and was going down this blues rabbit hole. So I was getting into like early Fleetwood Mac with Peter Green, and then going back further into the Three Kings. And Ray was a very jazz orientated rock guitar. He would have fit perfectly in Steely Dan. Ray would. He had a ton of attitude in his playing, but he didn't play chops. Ray was very musical and very melodic, and again, like Gilmour, but in a different way, because Gilmour tends to stay very much within the harmonic range of whatever chord he's playing through. Yes. Whereas Ray would probably approach him more like Robin Ford, where he would kind of go outside and around the harmony to get to the next chord. And he opened my ears up to an approach of playing that I've still not mastered. But it was amazing to have that kind of exposure that young to that kind of playing. And it taught me that rather than being a genre snob, I learned this later on, way after I left college, because I was so kind of blinkered at that age. I was very much just wanted to be in a blues band. I left the college funk band out of disdain for the ninth chord, and
solos probably.
I was like, I want to play pentatonic blues over dominant seventh. Thank you very much. So I started a band out of college, and I was introduced. So this band was kind of put together by local people who knew someone knew a drummer, someone else knew a bass player, someone else knew a singer. And there's a guy called Trevor Betterson, who was the singer, harmonica player, and guitarist in this band that we ended up putting together called The Melt. And he became my, blues. It was like going to his was like going to some sort of blues dojo, I'd go to Trebs and we'd stay up till God knows what time in the morning, drinking terrible beer and smoking cheap cigars, thinking we were muddy waters. But listening to all
what were
these,
you playing in the Melt then? What was the main sort of, was it covers or originals or what?
What we used to do, I mean, it's ironic, really, because what we used to do is take blues songs like "Stop Breaking Down,"
Yeah,
and then do them in a funk, like maybe like Approach It Like Doobie Brothers or something.
brilliant.
So I was kind of I left this funk band out of snobbery to play blues,
another funky blues band,
which then we'd ended up, And I think what happened, it's actually kind of a little bit of a mirror image of what happened with Broken Machine. If we sort of fast forward over the next 15 years, because really there's not an awful lot to talk about from my musical output anyway from then. That once the Melt had kind of dissolved, I had a band with my brother and a chap called Greg Smith, and we carried the Melt name on for a bit and ended up doing an indie band called June, spelled DJUNE. To which we had a reasonable amount of success, really. We did all right. We ended up doing shows with bands like Athlete and Ocean Colour Scene and the Pigeon Detectives and the Kooks, but we were always like the support band. We never really got beyond that level. We were very good at performing mediocre tunes that I'd written, to be honest. But we played it really well. So we were a good live band at playing songs that were fine, but you need songs that are great, I think, in order to really get anywhere. And I, at that point, was still obsessed with, I don't know, the superficial side of songwriting. In that, it was, I don't think I was really quite as into lyrics and melody. I was more into what the instrumental thing did to you emotionally. And that only appealed to a certain amount of our audience, So that dissolved, and then in the meantime, I'm working. So I had a couple of jobs at one point, and then I ended up getting a gig teaching at a local music college in Lincoln, and that turned into a career for like 5 years or 6 years, where I did a teaching degree and started wearing tweed jackets and drove an Audi for a bit, and that I sort of joined the real world for a couple of years, and I got an opportunity to play, because I was still playing during that period, and I had a band called Infamous Vampires, which is very much a love letter to Queens of the Stone Age. So I kind of got out of the blues thing for a bit and started to get into still guitar music, but heavier, more rock, just more rock music than blues music, and because I'm sort of really splunging over this 10-year period, and my brother played drums. My brother's played drums with some incredible guitar players over the years. He was in Jesse Davies' band from the Hoax for a bit. He played with Scott McKeon for a long time before Scott became a session player, and he also played with an incredible singer called Sean Webster.
Oh yes.
And Sean decided to go to, because Sean was a tree surgeon as well as a artist. So
okay.
I know, incredible, right? And he emigrated with his wife, and became a tree surgeon in America, in Australia for a few years.
Jeez.
She got pregnant while she was out there, and she's Dutch, so they went back to the Netherlands, and Sean was like, "Oh well, back in Europe, I'll start gigging again." So he rang Phil, and they decided they were going to try a guitar player out, and so I put my name in the hat, and that's how I met Roger Innes, actually, who plays with the band I'm with now. So Sean, Roger, Phil, and I met up, and I was still teaching at the time. In fact, our first rehearsal was at the rehearsal studios that we had for students where at the college.
That's rather handy, isn't it? That is.
Oh, it was very handy. It did have a few perks, that place. And it was a really up to that point, I'd never actually been on tour before, really. I'd never played any more than 5 gigs in a row. So playing for Sean was a massive eye-opener, and it really kicked off if it wasn't for that, we wouldn't be talking now. So I've got a lot to thank Sean for, really, for giving me an opportunity to do it, because by then my confidence wasn't anywhere near it had been 10 years ago. And you know, my playing was fine, but I think that when you're 18, 19, 20 years old, there's a youthful arrogance you have by the time you get to 30, and you've seen every other guitarist and gone and see what they can do, and you're like, oh crikey,
it's been kicked out of you by then, hasn't it?
Well, I had a little bit, I think. Yeah. You know.
Well, look, let's go to record. And
okay.
Since I'm talking to you today, I think it's only fair we should play one of your tracks. This
Okay,
is a
sure.
track called Peace and Love. See what you think of this.